During the contentious and unpredictable race for the White House, polls showed Ohio Governor John Kasich would be Hillary Clinton's most formidable opponent in the general election. Although the polls proved unreliable, Kasich was the last surviving Republican to fall to Donald Trump in the primary, preserved by voters who connected with his positive message and his decision not to participate in the mudslinging. I sat down with Governor Kasich to talk about his new book, Two Paths, highlighting lessons he learned on the campaign trail and solutions to America's problems, both in the political and public square.
So why did you choose to write this book, and what's the message that you want readers to take away?
Well, John, here's the problem. We are, unfortunately, a very divided country. Even in our families, sons and daughters and mothers and fathers are in arguments all the time about politics. And you know, we can't operate as a great United States of America if we're just fighting with one another. So I've observed over the course of many years being in public life and in business and many different things that I've observed the direction we've taken, and which has put us in a place where we don't have the strength as a country we need to have. But I'm also moving on to make the recommendations about how we can fix this, how we can become strong again. This is why I wrote the book. I wrote it really because I love my country and I love my 17-year-old daughters, and I want them to have the best America they can have.
So you talk about two paths. What are the two paths, and really, if we're at a precipice, where do you think we stand?
One is an approach to people that takes us to a dark place, a negative place. You don't have something because somebody else took it. And by the way, I'm a strong man and I can fix all of this, okay? The gnashing of teeth versus the approach that I took in the campaign and still take, which is, look, we know that we have challenges. You know, your son or daughters can't get a job, or you've lost your job, or you're not making much money, you can't pay your bills. We will dig into this and we will work together to take you to a better place. And the future can be bright. John, the other thing that is very, very important in our country today is that we have become increasingly secular. In other words, as societies mature, there's always a tendency to take God off the throne and put man on the throne, which then leads to a subjective set of values rather than an objective set of values. And so as we become more and more secularized, I think people have become not as certain as they should about the need to love God, which brings about humility, or love their neighbor as they want their neighbor to love them. You see, if we love our neighbor, then we respect our neighbor. If we love our neighbor, we help our neighbor. If we love our neighbor, then disagreements get to be, oh, we all disagree from time to time, but they don't go deep and go personal. And I'm very concerned about this. Now, if you happen to be a humanist and you reject what I say, that's fine with me if you wake up every day and want to fix the world. But for a large society, there is a definite need to have a sense of a higher power, a sense of responsibility, and also a hopefulness that you know that you leave your mark and make the world a better place. I do blame some of the people who are professional religionists for preaching a hellfire damnation philosophy that is not appealing to anybody, and I don't even think is right, because I think God is a God of love and grace and forgiveness and potential and unity. And if we can talk about those kinds of things, I believe we can recapture the millennials and we can have an awakening in this country, which is exactly what I believe we need.
You mentioned in your book these two paths, one of darkness, the other of optimism and hope. Yet a recent poll showed that 96% of Americans who supported Trump back in November would do it again. Is this not at odds with what you're putting out there? Does that not show that Americans are fine with the path that we're on and where America could be headed?
There's a poll that's just come out here in the last few days that indicates that all Americans think we're divided, and all Americans think that's not good. I mean, when I read that poll, and you know, polls, there's this poll and that poll, but when I read the sense that Americans believe that we do need to be unified, it was beyond coincidence that this book has come out to talk about the fact that we need to figure out the things that we agree with. And John, there is a common humanity. The need to fight the scourge of drugs in our community is not Republican or Democrat or blue or red. The need to mentor children so they understand their potential is not blue or red. The need to make sure that our seniors, when they lose a spouse, don't sit in their house and have no relationship with anybody because they're so alone. That's not blue or red. In other words, there's so much that connects us, and we need to drive the values and the enthusiasm and the excitement and the connectiveness from America, from where we live up. Because if we're waiting on the politicians, forget it. It's not going to happen.
You recently authored an op-ed in the New York Times suggesting that we risk losing the soul of the nation if we push through health care that leaves millions uninsured. There's talk that Republicans are closer this time around to having legislation that they can pass. Are you pleased with the changes that you're hearing?
I think what they're trying to do now is terrible. No, because it will result in millions of people being abandoned. But then we're back talking about the fact that, you know, if you're drug addicted or if you're mentally ill or if you're chronically ill, you really don't matter that much. You know, you're just a widget out there, you know, and we have to make the numbers add up. And what happens when you do that is you forget the common humanity. And does this Obamacare need to be significantly reformed? Absolutely. The exchanges are in very serious trouble. Insurance companies are leaving. Do we need to fix that? Yes. On the Medicaid side, are there ways in which we can improve Medicaid and also reduce the cost of the federal government? Absolutely. But this willy-nilly approach, and look, when you're a member of Congress and you're dealing with these problems, you might as well be on Mars because you're not in touch. You see, when you're a governor or a mayor, you actually see the impact on people. And that's a change in me. You know, when I first became a governor, I was acting like a congressman, you know, ideological, get this done, you know. Now, we had a crisis, and I had to take care of it, and I did. But over the course of time, I've come to understand that you have to understand the impact that you make whenever you make decisions in these jobs. And I just think that, look, here's the other thing. How is it possible that we are now dealing with a health care bill that affects the biggest chunk of the economy, and the Republicans will not even talk to Democrats about it? I mean, it's not sustainable, any more than it was when the Democrats jammed Obamacare through and never talked to Republicans. We don't live in a parliamentary system. And frankly, I think if we were able to talk to Democrats, we'd be able to come to a conclusion, come to a place where we could improve the system and have it be sustainable.
And what role can the chief executive, someone like Donald Trump, play in getting both
parties? I've talked to him about this, talked to him about the health care bill. I expressed my strong opinions to him about the direction we ought to go. To me, I think that you know, a leader needs to say, look, we need to get this right, we need to examine all this. And I don't think that Donald Trump is stuck on any particular bill or philosophy or proposal. I think he just wants to get something done, but we should do it right.
Governor Kasich, you spent an entire chapter talking about your faith. You start out talking about the death of your parents nearly, I guess it was 30 years ago. You talk about, at bottom, faith being a moral compass. In preceding chapters, you talked about how there's this baseline, but there are opportunities to rise up from that. Why include Donald Trump in a chapter about faith?
Yeah, well, no, I think the reason why he is in there is because the question is, do you want to have negative populism where you promise people things that you can't deliver, or you give people a reason to think they've been scapegoated, versus the fact that we need to have the sun come out and work together to solve problems. I mean, I think you saw the campaign. It was pretty nasty. I mean, the name calling and these rallies were just totally bizarre. I stood on a stage and saw people behave in a way that I thought was basically disgraceful. And that's not the way we're supposed to conduct ourselves. Look, the reason why I have a big chapter on faith, and I wrote an entire book on faith, is because I think people don't understand what it is by and large. I think that we've lost, you know, we're in the 21st century, and I think that faith has not evolved to become relevant to people. You know, on this book tour, I was on The Daily Show with Trevor Noah, and talked about faith. I was at Harvard here with 600-700 students in an auditorium, and I talked about why faith is important without jamming it down their throat or to tell them what it's meant to me and what it can mean to them. This is very, very important. But if we're only talking to one another, then we're not winning. We have to show people, you know, when I come in the CBN studio and I'm greeted nicely by you and everybody's, you know, positive and friendly, see, that gets your attention, as opposed to dour and negative and we're all, you know, we step out of line, we're going to get whacked by the big guy. It doesn't work. So it's been my intention, in addition to everything I've said in this book, to give people of faith a kind of a, what my take is, you know, who am I, but give people a take on, I think, the better way to present what we should be all about when we are faithful.
Last question for you, Governor Kasich. In many respects, your book can potentially be framed as a continuation of the conversation that you started with America when you kicked off your presidential campaign. Your second run neither ended as you hoped, but I'm sure you grew and you changed. So in what ways did this most recent campaign change you? How did you grow for the better?
Well, one of the things I learned is people are not all that into you know, with this health care plan or that tax plan. You know what people want? I believe they want to feel that people care about them, that they're important. What I learned in the campaign is there aren't enough people who feel as though when they have a victory that people celebrate with them, and when they have a loss that people mourn with them. People want to be paid attention to, and they want to believe that they're not all alone, which gives us a great opportunity as people of faith. We don't have to say much. You know, we know from the book of Job, you don't really have to say much, you just have to be there. And the more you talk, the worse you do. But just being there and letting people know you care can change the world.
So we may be jumping the gun here, but what's next for you?
I don't know. You know, if I can, you know, reduce my ego and open my ears and listen to those whispers, I'm sure that over time I'll get the signal about what I'm supposed to do. But it's going to require opening my ears and reducing my ego and just trying to be the best guy I can be.
We all wish you well.
Thank you, John.